Blaze stood proudly in his paddock, the pride of Riverbend Farm, with his gleaming black coat shining in the sunlight. However, everything changed when the stallion was found collapsed and unable to rise. Veterinarians delivered the heartbreaking news: permanent paralysis. As the family braced themselves for euthanasia, 6-year-old Hannah quietly slipped into the stable after midnight to bid farewell to her beloved friend. In her innocent exploration, she uncovered a truth so simple yet astonishing that it left everyone utterly stunned. For years, Blaze had been the crown jewel of Riverbend Farm. The magnificent black stallion, with his powerful stance and gleaming coat, had become a local celebrity in their small rural community. Blaze had collected countless ribbons at county fairs, often leaving other competitors in awe of his perfect form and movement. The Stoinis family had owned Riverbend Farm for 3 generations. David and Jane Stoinis ran the property, continuing the family tradition of breeding and raising quality horses. Their farm was known throughout the county for its excellent care and exceptional animals. Their granddaughter Hannah spent nearly every weekend at Riverbend Farm. At just 6 years old, she was remarkably different from other children her age. While most kids were loud and energetic, Hannah was quiet and thoughtful. She found more comfort in the company of animals than in that of people. There was something special about her, a gentleness that animals seemed to sense and respond to. From the moment Blaze arrived at the farm 2 years earlier, Hannah had formed an extraordinary bond with him. Despite his imposing size, Blaze always softened around the little girl. Hannah would sneak away from the farmhouse whenever she could, bringing him special treats, apple slices and carrots hidden in her pockets, presented when no one was watching. But 3 weeks ago, everything changed. Farmhands making their morning rounds found a disturbing sight. The once majestic stallion was down on the ground, struggling unsuccessfully to rise. The farm erupted into action. David called their veterinarian while farmhands tried to keep Blaze calm. Hannah watched from a distance, her small face filled with concern as adults rushed around in a state of controlled panic. Dr. Peterson, the local veterinarian, arrived within the hour. His examination was thorough, checking Blaze's vital signs and responses. The horse showed no obvious injuries, but something was preventing him from using his hind legs. Over the next few days, Blaze underwent numerous tests. Specialists were called in from the nearest large animal hospital. They performed x-rays, blood work, and neurological exams. Hannah would sit outside Blaze's stable for hours, just talking softly to him through the door. Finally, after a week of tests, the veterinarians reached their conclusion. Their faces were grim as they delivered the news to David. They believed Blaze had suffered significant spinal damage, likely from an unwitnessed fall. The damage had left his hind legs paralyzed. He could no longer stand, much less walk. Even worse, the specialists claimed Blaze was in constant pain. The injury wouldn't heal. It would only cause ongoing suffering. Dr. Peterson explained to Hannah's grandfather that the kindest thing would be to put Blaze down. The horse was suffering, and there was no recovery from this kind of injury. That evening, David and Jane sat Hannah down to explain. They chose their words carefully, trying to help their young granddaughter understand the concept of mercy when it came to animal suffering. They explained that sometimes letting go was an act of love. The procedure was scheduled for Saturday morning. Hannah nodded silently when they told her, but her eyes reflected a deep sadness that broke their hearts. Her quiet acceptance was somehow even more heartbreaking than tears would have been. The farm fell into a solemn mood as Saturday approached. Farmhands spoke in hushed tones around the stables. David made arrangements with Dr. Peterson, and Jane baked Hannah's favorite cookies, hoping to provide some small comfort. On Friday night, Hannah lay in bed in the guest room, unable to sleep. The thought of saying goodbye to Blaze kept her wide awake. As the night grew deeper and the house fell silent, Hannah made a decision. She slipped out of bed and dressed quietly without making a sound. She crept down the stairs and out the back door. The night air was cool against her face as she made her way across the moonlit yard. The moon cast long shadows as Hannah quietly approached the stable. With practiced hands, she unlatched the door, careful not to make any noise. She wanted to say goodbye to her friend properly, away from the sympathetic gazes of adults. Blaze was lying on his side in the straw. His once gleaming coat had lost its luster, now appearing dull in the moonlight. His eyes, though still gentle, were clouded with what everyone had assumed was pain from his injury. Hannah sat beside him, gently stroking his neck. She spoke softly about all their memories together. The apple slices she'd snuck to him, the time she read storybooks while he listened, and the way he'd nuzzle her hair when she was sad. As the night passed, Hannah noticed something unusual. Blaze kept attempting to roll onto his stomach, as if trying to position himself to stand, but each time he would immediately recoil, letting out a painful whinny before settling back onto his side. This behavior struck Hannah as strange. It didn't look like his spine was hurting. It seemed like he was reacting to something else. With childlike curiosity, unclouded by medical assumptions, she began to wonder if everyone had missed something important. Hannah started gently examining Blaze's legs and hooves in the dim light. She ran her small hands carefully along his limbs, watching his reactions. When she reached his right hind leg, Blaze remained calm, but when her hand moved toward his hoof, the horse suddenly tensed. When she reached his right hoof, Blaze flinched dramatically. Hannah paused, then tried again more gently. The same reaction occurred. Hannah leaned in closer, squinting in the limited moonlight. What she saw made her gasp. Embedded deep in the frog of his hoof, the sensitive V-shaped pad on the underside was a large, dark thorn. It had penetrated so deeply that it looked almost like part of the hoof itself, nearly invisible against the black color. No wonder the veterinarians had missed it during their examinations. Hannah ran back to the farmhouse, her small feet carrying her as fast as they could go. She burst through the door and raced upstairs, frantically waking her grandparents. At first, they thought she was having a nightmare about Blaze's fate, but Hannah's insistence made them follow her to the stable with a flashlight. Under the bright beam of the flashlight, the thorn was clearly visible. David knelt beside Blaze's hoof, carefully examining what Hannah had discovered. His face transformed from skepticism to shock, then to cautious hope. The veterinarian was called right away. Despite the late hour, Dr. Peterson arrived and confirmed Hannah's findings. What had been misdiagnosed as paralysis was actually Blaze's reaction to excruciating pain whenever he bore weight on his injured hoof. A thorn had embedded itself deeply in one of the most sensitive areas of the horse's anatomy and had become infected. This infection caused swelling that pressed on nearby nerves, making it unbearable for Blaze to stand. That night, Dr. Peterson performed a straightforward procedure to remove the thorn and drain the infection, administering antibiotics to combat it. The relief on Blaze's face was almost immediate. Once the pressure was alleviated, he was standing again within 2 weeks. His initial attempts were shaky, but each day brought more strength back to his legs. By the end of the month, Blaze was galloping across the paddock as if nothing had ever happened, his coat once again shining in the sunlight. The story of Hannah and Blaze quickly spread throughout the community. Dr. Peterson even brought veterinary students to meet Hannah, explaining how sometimes the most observant eyes are those that see with the heart, rather than through years of medical training. Hannah's love for Blaze had saved his life. Her determination to challenge what everyone else believed had completely changed the outcome. As Blaze regained his former glory, everyone at Riverbend Farm was reminded that hope can arise from the most unexpected places, even from a quiet 6-year-old girl who simply refused to say goodbye to her friend. Have you ever had a moment where your instinct told you something different than what experts believed? What would you have done in Hannah's position? Let us know in the comments section. I hope you liked this video. Please give it a thumbs up and share it with your loved ones. Also subscribe and press the bell icon to never miss the update from our channel. Thank you.